especially messages on the site. And I know this is going to be really hard for some people, but I need to let you know that they did find her. And she's now with the Lord. Yeah, she's not with us anymore. I had a feeling about this before. Maybe God put it on my heart, prepared me for it. I don't know. But it was not an accidental thing. I'm just going to tell you that. Somebody did this to her, and the police are working on it right now.
Chelsey, and I have a cat and iguana, and I love them. And yeah.
Say something about your dad.
My dad does radio productions, whatever how heck you say that.
Productions?
Productions, there you go.
Chelsey Lea Gauthier was only 22 years old, a young Indigenous woman from Abbotsford, British Columbia, and a loving mother of two. To those who knew her, Chelsey was gentle yet strong, the kind of person who could brighten a room with her laughter even when her own life was quietly breaking apart. She had dreams, small, beautiful dreams, of giving her children a better future, of finding stability, and of one day opening her own small coffee shop. But life hadn't been easy for Chelsey. She was navigating her way through a world that wasn't kind to women like her, young, struggling, and Indigenous. She had faced heartbreak, financial stress, and people who often mistook her kindness for weakness. Yet, despite everything, she kept going. Her family often said she was the light of the house, a girl who carried warmth even in the coldest moments. Early July 2017, Chelsey was trying to start fresh. She had recently reconnected with a few friends and was trying to rebuild her life, one day at a time. On the evening of July 7, 2017, she was last seen at a McDonald's in Abbotsford. Witnesses remember her ordering food, smiling faintly, and talking to two men who were sitting near her table. Nothing seemed alarming at first, just a regular evening in a small Canadian town. But that image, captured on a security camera, would soon become the last proof of her existence. The next morning, her phone went silent. Her social media, usually active with small posts and photos of her kids, suddenly stopped. At first, her family assumed she was spending time with friends or taking a short break. But as hours turned into days, unease began to settle in. Chelsey wasn't someone who would vanish without a word, especially not from her two little children. Days later, missing posters began to flood local shops, lampposts, and social media feeds. Missing, Chelsey Lea Gauthier, 22. Last seen at McDonald's, Abbotsford. Friends and strangers joined hands in searching for her, walking through fields, checking shelters, and calling hospitals, but there was no sign of Chelsey. It was as if she had simply disappeared into thin air. Her family, especially her father, refused to believe she had left by choice. They knew something terrible had happened. But without evidence, without witnesses, and with no real leads, the police could do little more than open a missing person file. Weeks passed, then months, and the hope of finding Chelsey alive began to fade. Then, on a quiet August afternoon, nearly 6 weeks after her disappearance, two hikers in Mission, British Columbia stumbled upon something strange. Beneath a layer of loose soil, in a shallow, unmarked grave, they noticed what looked like a piece of fabric. When police arrived and began digging, the truth surfaced, literally. What they found was the body of a young woman. DNA tests confirmed what everyone had feared. It was Chelsey. The discovery shook the entire community. The once peaceful town of Abbotsford turned silent in grief. People who had followed her missing case online felt heartbreak and anger. How could someone bury a young mother in the dirt, like her life meant nothing? Who were the two men from that McDonald's footage? And why had no one come forward? For Chelsey's loved ones, the pain was unbearable. Her children would grow up without their mother, and her family was left with only questions and memories. The case soon grew cold, the investigation quiet, and the world moved on, but her story did not end there. Because 5 years later, in 2022, when everyone had nearly stopped talking about Chelsey Gauthier, the silence finally broke. Police made an arrest. A man in his 50s, linked to an illegal cannabis grow operation, was charged in connection with her death. It wasn't closure, but it was the first step toward truth. And as the case unfolded over the next few years, what came out in court would shock the community once again, revealing not only the story of a young woman's tragic death, but the dark network of people and secrets that had surrounded her in her final days. This wasn't just another murder. It was a story about how a mother's light was extinguished, how justice was delayed for years, and how one family refused to let her memory disappear. The discovery of Chelsey's body in the summer of 2017 shattered the quiet town of Abbotsford. News headlines carried her picture, that same warm smile, and the chilling caption, "Body of missing 22-year-old mother found near mission." But behind the headlines was a storm of grief, frustration, and silence. The investigation began with hope. Detectives from the RCMP combed through hours of CCTV footage, phone records, and witness statements. The last confirmed sighting, that McDonald's meeting, became the center of their focus. 2 unidentified men seen in the footage were believed to hold the key to the mystery. But when police tried to trace them, the trail led nowhere. No names, no vehicles, no witnesses who could remember anything solid. Chelsey's friends told investigators she'd been spending time with some older guys who had promised her money and a job. Others whispered about a house in Mission, a rural property surrounded by forest, known for illegal cannabis operations. But nothing could be proven. There was talk, suspicion, and fear, but no hard evidence. As the months passed, the case grew colder. Leads dried up, and detectives were reassigned to other files. For Chelsey's family, it was a living nightmare. Every night her father, Ray, would scroll through her old photos, replaying memories of her laughter and the sound of her voice. On social media, he became known as Trucker Ray, a man who refused to give up. He posted her story again and again, keeping her name alive even when the world had stopped listening. Years passed. Seasons changed. But justice never came until 2022. In early spring, RCMP officers raided a large illegal cannabis grow operation on the outskirts of Mission. The property was remote, hidden behind tall trees and accessible only by a dirt road. Inside, they found rows of plants, chemicals, cash, and weapons. But buried under a pile of old debris, investigators found something else, a small box containing women's jewelry, an old cell phone, and a purse with faded photos inside. Among those photos was a picture of Chelsey. That discovery reignited the case. The property belonged to a 53-year-old man named Robert "Bobby" L., known locally as a grow-op manager and small-time dealer. He had a criminal record, nothing major, but enough to make the police suspicious. When investigators questioned him about Chelsey, his answers were inconsistent. He claimed he had never met her, yet phone records showed several late-night calls between his number and hers in the weeks before she vanished. A forensic team searched the property again, this time with advanced ground-penetrating equipment. What they found shocked even the officers. Traces of disturbed soil matched the same kind of clay found at Chelsey's burial site. DNA samples, though degraded, tied the location directly to her disappearance. In December 2022, Robert L. was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and interference with human remains. For Chelsey's family, it was the moment they had prayed for and feared. The man who might have taken their daughter's life was finally facing trial. But deep down, they knew this was only the beginning. The arrest brought new questions, new pain, and a haunting truth: Chelsey's death wasn't random. It was connected to a web of people who had used her, deceived her, and then silenced her. The court hearings began in 2023. Witnesses came forward with chilling stories. One woman claimed Chelsey had told her she was scared of a man she met through some shady cannabis work. Another said Chelsey had once mentioned seeing something she wasn't supposed to see, a secret that could get her killed. For investigators, the pieces were finally coming together, a story of manipulation, greed, and betrayal. Chelsey had been lured into a dangerous world she barely understood. By 2025, after years of legal battles, public outrage, and emotional testimonies, the case reached its final chapter, a verdict that would shock not only the courtroom but the entire community that had waited so long for justice. The courtroom in New Westminster was heavy with silence. It had been nearly 8 long years since 22-year-old Chelsey Lea Gauthier vanished from that McDonald's in Abbotsford, and now, her story was reaching its painful conclusion. For Chelsey's family, especially her father, Trucker Ray Gauthier, every day since July 2017 had been a battle between hope and heartbreak. They had fought through silence, dead ends, and police delays, but they never gave up. Today, they were here for one reason: justice. The man on trial was Robert "Bobby" Losh, a 69-year-old Mission resident linked to an illegal cannabis grow operation. Prosecutors alleged that Chelsey met him through people who promised her work and money. What she didn't know was that she was walking into a trap, a world built on manipulation, fear, and greed. During the investigation, police had uncovered traces of Chelsey's belongings buried near Losh's property: a purse, old photos, and fragments of soil that matched the very ground where her body was found. The evidence connected him directly to her disappearance and death. Inside the courtroom, prosecutors showed how Chelsey had been terrified in her final days. One witness recalled her saying, "He won't let me leave." Another said she had seen something she wasn't supposed to see, a hint that Chelsey had discovered something dangerous inside that grow operation. Gary Losh is guilty of manslaughter and indignity to human remains. The words echoed through the courtroom. It wasn't the full murder conviction her family had prayed for, but it was enough to prove that Chelsey's death was not forgotten, that someone was responsible. For a brief moment, the world stood still. Chelsey's father lowered his head, tears rolling down his face. Outside, the media called it a bittersweet justice. But controversy soon followed. Despite the conviction, Losh was released on bail while awaiting his final sentencing, a decision that left many outraged. To Chelsey's supporters, it felt like another betrayal, another sign that the system had failed Indigenous women yet again. Still, something had changed. Chelsey's story had awakened a movement. Her name was spoken at rallies, vigils, and national gatherings calling for justice for missing and murdered Indigenous women across Canada. Her father kept her story alive online, posting her photos with the same message every July: "For you, my girl. Until we meet again." Because Chelsey Lea Gauthier was not just another name on a missing poster, she was a daughter, a mother, and a light, buried once, but never forgotten. Chelsey's legacy became larger than her tragedy. She became a symbol of strength, of a young mother who wanted a better life for her children, and of a family's endless love that refused to let her memory fade. Every year, candles are lit in Abbotsford, near that same McDonald's where she was last seen. People gather, hold hands, and remember her smile. They say her story taught them that justice delayed doesn't mean justice denied, and that truth, no matter how long it takes, always finds its way to light. Chelsey is gone, but her voice still echoes through time. Help her story reach the world. Subscribe to Darkroom Diaries. And stand for truth that can't be silenced.